so here we are trying to maximize our profit function. And so the first thing that we're going to do is we need to create our profit function. So what is our profit function? Our profit function is revenue minus our cost function. The key thing you want to remember with the profit function is you do need to distribute this negative to all of the cost function. So of course you can put parentheses around revenue, but it's not going to matter. But those parentheses around the cost function are very important because we do need to distribute the negative. So the first step is going to be to create the revenue function. So my revenue function is negative q to the third plus 340 q squared. That is our revenue function. Then we subtract that from our cost function, which is the in parentheses 320 plus 14q. So we have our revenue minus our cost. And then we need to distribute the negative. So we have negative q to the third plus 340 q squared minus 320 minus 14q. Now there are no like terms there to combine, so that is our profit. And you'll notice the first question they ask is what is marginal profit? So for part A here, marginal profit would be our P prime. So we'll take our derivative, get negative 3q squared, and the 2 times 340 will give us a 680q. The negative 320 is a standalone constant, so it goes to 0, and then the negative 14q just goes to negative 14. Because it's a linear term, so it goes to the coefficient. So this answer would be our answer for marginal profit, negative 3q squared plus 680q minus 14. Then for part B, we are asked for how many items will maximize the profit function. So to maximize profit, the first thing we need to do is find our critical numbers. So to find my critical number, I'm going to take my profit function, which is negative 3q squared plus 680q minus 14, and set it equal to 0. Now, usually when I find my critical numbers, I then think about the factors of the first times the last. So factors of negative 3 times negative 14, factors of 42 that add up to 68 or 680. And this is where I come crashing into a brick wall. There are no factors that add up to 680 and multiply to 42. So what do? What we do is we remember that this is a quadratic function, and the go-to method that we have if we can't factor when we have quadratic is we can use the quadratic formula. Now, I will promise you on your test 3, I'm probably not going to ask about the quadratic formula, but I think it's important in the homework to have this embedded so we're not always thinking we can factor it, because honestly sometimes we can't factor it. So if we can't factor it, we're going to go into the quadratic formula. So what we're doing here is we're applying the quadratic formula to negative 3q squared plus 680q minus 14. So my A is going to be negative 3, my B is going to be the 680, and my C is the negative 4. Again, going into the quadratic formula. So my quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we think about this as these little parentheses skeleton that we want to plug into. So my b is the positive 680, b squared positive 680 minus 4 times a, which is negative 3, c, which is negative 14, all over 2 times a, which is negative 3. That is going to simplify out to negative 680 plus or minus the square root of, and remember here, I would just put all of this in on your calculator, the quantity underneath the radical. So just put parentheses 680 squared minus 4, negative 3, negative 14, and that will give you 462,232 over negative 6. And that is not a perfect square, obviously. So what we have to then do is split this up into the plus case and the minus case. So we'll have negative 680 plus the square root of this 462,232 over negative 6, and then compute the negative 680 minus the square root of 400,602 over negative 6. Now, working through that computation, again, you would definitely need your calculator for this. You would take negative 680 plus the square root 462232 and then divide that by negative 6. That gives you, did I do that correctly? So negative 680 plus square root and then divide by negative 6 gives you approximately 0.02. And then over here, take our same expression but with a minus and then divide by negative 6 gives us 226.64. Now, here, when they say to round to 2 decimal places, they do say to round to 2 decimal places, that 0.646 will round up to a 226.65. So technically, you have these two critical numbers. Now, when you're thinking about this, just kind of from a practical standpoint, you're trying to maximize profit. If you look at 0.02, that kind of looks like it's probably not going to be the thing that maximizes profit, but you never know. So what you do is you put the 0.02 down, you put the 226.65 down, and then plug into your profit function's derivative. So my profit function's derivative again was the negative 3q squared plus 680q minus 14. So I might plug in 0 for this first interval, and that's going to give us 0 minus 14. So that gives us a negative. So there we have a negative. And then from 0.02 to 220, maybe I plug in 1, get negative 3 times 1 squared plus 680 times 1 minus 14. And that is going to give us a that's going to give us a positive. And then I plug in maybe 300. And that is going to give us a negative. So that tells us that we go down, then up, and then down. And so that means that we are maximizing the profit at this 226.65. And that is the number of units. That's not the profit because we didn't plug into the profit function. That is simply the number of units. So when it says how many items are needed to maximize profit, we would say this 226.65 items are needed.